Hello, Nate Streeter, StreetSmart Marketing, Paperboy Printing and Distribution. We have a very special guest with us today. In fact, I must say, and wait till my staff hears this, but you are definitely the cutest guest that I've had. Anyway, we're going to interview with my wife, and we're doing a series really about how to balance work and family, or work and life. And my staff and I were sitting down and talking about this. We said, gosh, Leah would have so many interesting things to say about this, and won't be worried to rake Nate over the coals, which will be kind of interesting. And so we said, that sounds great. So I kind of prepared some questions to ask her and to get her input of being married to an entrepreneur for 15 years. And we also have just some background. We have 3 kids, 12, 8, and 7. And Leah mostly is very involved in their lives and at their school. During the summer, doesn't work too much with StreetSmart or Paperboy. During the school year, a little more. I'd say like 5 to 15 hours a week. Does that sound right, Leah?
Yes.
Okay, so she's a little more involved, but not really in the business, and definitely not an entrepreneur. But let's just break right into this. So I know one of the things that you and I have talked about for a long time is that it seems like entrepreneurs, they're always working on the next big thing. There's always something big. There's some opportunity, and they believe that success is something that's imminent. It's just right around the corner. Honey, just a couple more months and I'll have this, or by this time next year, I'll we'll be doing this. And I hate to say this, but I feel like there's a certain amount of false hope. Entrepreneurs tend to have this overly optimistic outlook on life. And how do you handle that? Do you just ignore it, or what? For you, how in the world do you deal with that?
I think you have to look at your spouse and decide how they work and what they need. And for you and I know that how you learn is by speaking. And so just engaging you so that you can talk through some of the things you're thinking of, and not necessarily are looking for my opinion and realizing that, but just talking through something and working it out that way. And for myself, I'm generally the more optimistic of our pair. So even though I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm usually more hopeful and the sky is sunny even if there's clouds kind of person. So I don't think that's quite as big of a problem between us. But it can be wearing when there's, just work a little bit harder to get to somewhere else, and things will change when this happens. But just setting up boundaries and knowing that there's time limits for things, I think, is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So have you given up hope that we're going to be millionaires next year, or?
I don't think I ever had a hope for that.
Okay. So you were realistic right from the beginning. So these entrepreneurs, these people, we call entrepreneurs, and they're always working. They wake up right from the minute that they wake up. They're checking their phone. They're engaging with their day. They work through lunch. They work at least till dinner, sometimes after dinner. And it seems like even when they're not working, they're working. They're thinking about work. They're strategizing. How do you deal with that? I'm guessing sometimes you just want to strangle me. What? I know that we've been watching movies together before, and you kind of notice that I'm really not engaged with the movie, or whatever, fill in the blank. How do you keep from killing me each day? I guess that's really the question I'm asking.
I think it just takes time to get used to a person, whether they have work addiction or are working on some idea that they have, and just knowing limitations and just not necessarily taking it personally, not thinking, well, I must be completely the most boring person because he's on his phone or looking at an email or checking out a website or looking into something else. So I think not taking it personally and just realizing that, but then also setting boundaries when there is times where there is no cell phones and we're not answering emails or replying to things get turned off, and
Right.
focus can be directed where it needs to be.
Right. The so the we've talked and we've done some of these things in our marriage too. You know, entrepreneurs, they talk about systems, and I think you've done a particularly good job of pushing our family towards systems, whether it's daddy dates or babysitting co-op or family nights.
Chore charts.
What's that?
Chore charts.
Chore charts, right. But, or even like some of our friends have gone through that book, The Love Dare, which, I mean, really all those things are systems. I mean, do you think they work? And you know, is that a good way for entrepreneurs? I mean, if they, you know, if they've got a daddy date like we have in our family where they're getting together with their kids, or a date night that's already scheduled and it's on the calendar, or, I mean, do you think those things work to help entrepreneurs kind of create balance in their lives?
I think so. I personally think those things are important for all families, not just families that are entrepreneurs, but especially if you're having a hard time separating the two or putting time aside. You know, if you've already got it on your calendar and you know that, you know, Thursday evening I can't make videos or calls or estimates or whatever because that's the night that I'm going to be spending with my wife or my child, or you know, spending some relaxing time, then it will happen. But it really only is going to work for someone that uses a schedule and can stick to it. If it's just, if that's not the way you work, then, you know, it doesn't work as well. But I think if you're committed to it and you know it's important, I think for sure getting things on the calendar, even just in our personal life, you know, you run into someone you know and you say, hey, let's get together sometime. Then you never do. Right. Unless you actually make the effort, get it on the calendar. Maybe it's not going to happen this week, but sometime in the next month you get it on the calendar, it actually happens. Right. And I feel like that's helped too. I mean, you know, I feel like I've been able to focus more on the kids, knowing that this is the time I do that, or focus more on you when I know this is the time to do that, or with the mentoring, or you know, just different things. So what about, you know, I remember back when we had our first child back in 2001, and back then, you know, our business, it was our first business, and, you know, I was pretty much still on the idea that, you know, if you want to have success, you got to work harder. And I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I remember you kind of cautioning me, like, this isn't going to make, you know, for a happy marriage and a good family. And what sort of flashed before your eyes at that point? I sort of think that, I don't know, how many days off did I take when our first child was born? 1. So maybe perhaps... Spent the night in the hospital, and then the next day you left and went back to work. Okay, and that was probably hard. It was. I think it was probably harder with the second and third child than the first one. Okay. When you take it into perspective. Yeah. But, I mean, generally you were busy working or even going to school or doing ministry or other volunteer things, and so we didn't have as much time. And, you know, that was something that I tried to keep in perspective when you were in school and working, that, you know, there's an end to this and it won't be like this forever. But yeah, it definitely, it puts things in perspective, and it's not as comfortable if you start comparing yourself to friends or other people that work 9 to 5 and get 3 to 4 weeks vacation. It's not the same. Yeah. But I think it's important that you remember when you're an entrepreneur that you're not comparing yourself with other people that are working 9 to 5 with 3 weeks of vacation, because they're going to have a different overall work experience and family than you are. Yeah, and you're really going into my next question perfectly here, which is, you know, we're into our 30s now. Maybe I shouldn't say that on the video. We're young. I won't say how far into our 30s. How about that? And several of our friends are really hitting their stride with their careers, and some have 2, 3, heck, even 4 weeks of paid vacation. And I know that's something you've loathed about me being self-employed, the lack of paid vacation. You know what? You know, give me an idea of what that is. I mean, obviously it's on Facebook and you're seeing pictures of them with their family, and everybody's smiling. Of course, they weren't smiling 5 seconds before they took the picture, but somehow mom figured out how to make them all smile for a second. And so
what is it about vacation that we all just want so much?
I think part of it is like just that whole American ideal that people kind of have been raised to see, whether you're in the Midwest and you're going to a cabin over weekends and spending time, trekking through the woods or at the lake, or, flying out to New York or some exotic place, but just spending some time where you're not bogged down by all the things that you're normally bogged down at home.
So what's exotic when, for you and I, we grew up in North Minneapolis here, so exotic for us is what, like Florida?
Yeah, pretty much. Anywhere where things grow through the whole year.
Yeah, there you go. But, do you think it is also partly that they would be wholly present? I mean, kind of like my grandma talks about where, you're not, you haven't brought your laptop, you haven't brought your phone. I mean, I don't even know if that's realistic unless you go to a third world country. But
I don't think that we've gone on vacation and you've not brought your phone or not brought your laptop to check in.
And have you,
just taking some time to do that is fine, but realizing that a big chunk of that time, are spent together. And I think for us, partly right now, we're just trying to spend time putting memories and input into our children's lives before they get old enough and don't really want to do those things anymore.
With us, sure.
And take that opportunity that we have now before it's gone. Because vacation in 20 years from now is going to look completely different than what it does now.
Right. And, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, how do you feel like our kids are all old enough now where they're in school. And, are they feeling like I'm around enough? And do you feel like they're getting the short end of the stick because I'm an entrepreneur? And, how do you feel about that?
I think that they're going to have a slightly tainted view since your office is above our garage and you're pretty much always, somewhat there close by, when you go to meetings and other things like that, but actually more around, come in for lunch during the summer and, you'll maybe start working at the breakfast table, but you're still there. They probably see you more than they would if you had worked a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
But you might not necessarily be engaged with them during that time, but you're definitely, there's a presence there.
And this is about entrepreneurs, but I can kind of think back to Leave It to Beaver, and that guy's reading the newspaper. And I think, men aren't always engaged even if they're not entrepreneurs, right? That it doesn't necessarily, have to do with that. But anyway, keep going. Let's keep going. And, I know vacation is something that all entrepreneurs, or a lot of entrepreneurs I've talked to, that's something they want to work towards. Tell me, one of the things that I'm realizing about being an entrepreneur is that it's not necessarily what we do, but kind of who we are. We're always thinking about how to improve things, make things better, finding opportunities and taking advantage of different things. Are you still holding out hope that I'm going to get that normal job or...
No, not really.
So at some point that changed and you thought, no, it's just not going to happen? Or
I think that if I had a choice of what you did, I don't know that necessarily I would choose like a 9 to 5 because I don't know that would really fit well for who you are and what your skill set is. So, maybe for a family life, the idea of having like packages that come with health insurance and dental and everything laid out and vacation, like the idea of that does look good, but it doesn't fit for every personality and it's not necessarily what's best for every family either.
Well, and you're kind of, it's funny because social pressures are different depending on where you live and when you live. If you live in Africa right now, obviously the social pressures are extremely different, right? And they're probably not thinking about vacation, or at least a lot of the population in Africa. And 100 years ago, or maybe 150 before I suppose you got to go 200 years almost before the Industrial Revolution, but vacation looked very different too. They would have, if you can think of a more agricultural society, but, they were working all the time, but often they were working with their family.
Or, well, I mean, if you're looking at agriculture, you would, in the winter, there would be like a big chunk of time that they didn't really work at all. So they would be spending a lot of time with each other and
Right.
resting and preparing for a different season.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, these kinds of things are interesting. And thank you so much, Leah. If you need help with these things, which I feel like every entrepreneur does, we're here to help at StreetSmart. We can help you find balance between work and life and help you work on your business, not in it, and help you prioritize. And I think the main thing that I really look at is help you eliminate that regret. I definitely don't want you to feel like, man, I wish I would have been able to spend more time with my wife or more time with my kids or more time with my husband or whatever the case might be. I just don't want you to have regret. Like Leah hinted at so much, I think it can be a little different depending on each person and situation, and just to recognize that. But you have to sort of figure out the systems and different things for yourself and for your business and for your family to make it all successful. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you soon.